My name is Jenna Crawford. At a birthday party filled with candlelight and laughter, my sister suddenly pointed straight at my face and shouted, "You ruined my life and this entire family!" The room went silent. My mother just gave a quiet nod as if it were simply the truth. No one stood up for me. I got up, picked up the small bag beside my chair, and walked out of the house I once believed was home. No one called my name. No one stopped me. And this morning, they called me 17 times. They needed me. But what changed? Why is it only when everything falls apart that I'm remembered? Have you ever been turned away by your own family, only to be called back when they need someone to clean up the mess? If this story resonates with you, please hit like, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel. Because what happened next? You won't be able to look away. I still remember clearly the night before Lauren's college entrance exam. She sat curled up at the edge of the kitchen table, clutching her SAT prep book while I brewed ginger tea for both of us. I wrote her scholarship application draft, 3 different versions so she could choose the tone she liked. I read each paragraph aloud, edited every comma, every sentence to make her sound intelligent, yet humble. Every time Lauren got a scholarship or an acceptance letter, my mother would call every relative to brag. But the only name mentioned was Lauren, just Lauren. I was the one behind the camera, taking the photos, holding the birthday cake, and they called me the reliable helper, as if I were backstage crew in my own life story. Later, when Lauren became an online sensation, building an image as a self-made education coach with millions of followers, I still hoped that somewhere in her story I would be mentioned, not as a shadow, but as the sister who stayed up all night for her future. But no. In every live stream, Lauren would say, "I studied on my own, figured it out by myself, and got through it alone." Every time I heard that, I gave a dry smile. Not sad anymore, just hollow, like a room that no one remembers the name of. I once started a small online tutoring platform aimed at helping struggling students, those who couldn't afford expensive centers. I poured almost all my savings into licensing the software, registering the domain, writing the curriculum chapter by chapter. Lauren knew all of this. She used to sit beside me, asking a few questions, even asked me to help design an assessment tool for her students. But just a few months later, I got a message from a friend. "Your sister just posted a video about creating an education system from scratch. Is that the same thing you told me about?" I opened my phone. In the video, Lauren was beaming, and behind her was the exact model I had drawn on my whiteboard weeks ago. She had photographed it, edited it, embedded it into her own program, and called it my exclusive breakthrough idea. I called my mother, hoping to say something, anything. She was quiet for a while, then calmly said, "You need to learn to accept it. The more talented one always gets recognized." I used to think it was impossible for someone to disappear from their own family without anyone noticing. But then one day, I walked into the living room and froze in front of the new photo on the wall. A large family portrait, light wood frame, the lighting warm and flawless. Lauren sat in the center, holding a wine glass, my mother on the left, my father on the right. The 3 of them smiling like the cover of a holiday magazine. I stared for a long time, trying to find myself, hoping maybe I was just blocked by the angle or lighting. But no, I wasn't in it. Not a trace. They had replaced the old photo from when I was 16, the one where I stood awkwardly at the edge, smiling stiffly because I'd been pushed aside for blocking Lauren. I had always kept that photo straight when I dusted, and now it was gone, and no one said a word. I didn't ask, didn't accuse. I just felt as if someone had quietly erased my name from the family tree in their hearts, as if I'd never been part of their story. But the truth is, I was there. I was the one who wiped Lauren's tears the night she got her first rejection. I was the one who placed my hand on Mom's shoulder when she was worried about Dad's illness. I was the only one home during the holidays when Lauren flew to California for her career, but that never counted as being present. They only remembered the ones who looked good in photos, spoke eloquently, and earned applause from outsiders. I used to imagine that one day, Lauren would mention me in an interview. That she'd say, "I have a sister. She's the reason I made it." But the longer I waited, the farther that sentence drifted. Now I'm left with questions that will never be answered, and a silence that stretches like a crack no one ever bothered to seal. And on the night I left that house, walking through the dim hallway light, the new family portrait still hung neatly on the wall. I paused for a moment, just to look one last time. Not because I wanted to return, but because I wanted to remember the exact second I was officially erased. Not with shouting, but with absence. No one in the photo remembered I ever existed. No eyes in that frame looked toward me, and I walked away, lightly, as if I had never belonged there. I spent nearly 4 months developing a community education model, a flexible learning program combining online tutoring and emotional coaching for students with difficult backgrounds. From content structure to student engagement to each assessment diagram, I built everything with my own 2 hands. I printed 7 different copies of the proposal and sent them to nonprofit organizations nationwide, hoping one of them would sponsor the project so I could do something meaningful. When I mailed the applications, I thought, all I need is for just one place to see me. Just one. 3 weeks later, I received rejection letters from all 7. Each one said the same thing. We've recently funded a similar project, praised for its feasibility and innovation. I sat in silence at my desk, staring at the model I had built, every word, every line of analysis, crafted from over 5 years of tutoring struggling students. So why did someone else have something identical, and who had been close enough to know every detail? The next morning, while organizing my files, I received a message from Hannah, an old friend I used to work with at a test prep center before I left to start my own project. Her message contained only a link and 3 words: "Have you seen?" I opened the link, confused. It was Lauren's latest video, already nearing 1 million views in just a few days. The title: How I Built My Own Independent Learning Academy. Behind her was a whiteboard covered with diagrams and data. Even the headline layout mirrored the intro section I had written. I stopped cold when I saw the flexible learning zone map, the one I'd spent nearly 2 weeks designing in Illustrator, now displayed prominently in the video with the caption, "An original concept from my research journey." I felt my throat tighten. The video lasted 17 minutes, with Lauren confidently describing how she built an entirely new education model from the ground up. Not once did she mention anyone else's support or contribution. Every part I had painstakingly written, from the mission to help underserved students to the behavioral-based progress tracking, was there, only with her name on it. I sat up straight, pulled out my original proposal. Each phrase, each graphic, even the pastel infographic I'd submitted were all replicated in Lauren's video, as if they were the result of her own research. I called Hannah immediately. Her voice was low, like she was trying to hold back anger. "I wasn't sure if I should send that to you," she said, "but I knew. Every bit of it is yours. I still have the file you asked me to review. There's no mistake." I closed the laptop and sat still. It felt like someone had just slammed a door inside my head. I couldn't understand how Lauren got access to all that content, but then I remembered, on the day I submitted the application, I printed the final version using the home printer. Lauren was there. She even asked, "What are you rushing to submit?" I didn't hide anything. I handed it to her. She glanced at it and said, "Looks good. Good luck." And yet, just 3 weeks later, everything I had written, outlined, and poured effort into appeared under someone else's name, while I received rejection letters. I called my mother and told her everything. She didn't sound surprised. She simply asked, "Did Lauren know you were applying too?" I said yes. She paused, then replied softly, "Maybe that's a lesson. You shouldn't share things until you're ready to see them taken." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My mother, the same woman who once praised Lauren as the decisive child, now implied that having my work stolen was my fault for speaking too soon. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my temporary rental room, dim yellow light reflecting off the ceiling. I reopened old emails, rereading each rejection letter, every line of feedback, each organization I'd pinned my hopes on for a callback. They all said the same cold phrase: "We have selected a similar project." I kept wondering, if Lauren hadn't posted that video, would anyone have known about my model? If I'd been the one to receive funding first, would she have done the same thing? The questions kept flowing, one after another, like a stream that wouldn't stop. But what hurt most wasn't that my work was stolen. It was that the person who took it had once shared a room with me as a child, asked me to help her study for every subject, once told me I wouldn't make it if it weren't for you. And now she stood in front of millions, claiming all the credit and calling it my personal journey. I opened my computer and created a new folder, naming it "Do Not Forget." Inside, I saved all my original drafts, every email I'd sent, Lauren's video, and Hannah's messages. I didn't know yet what I would do with them. But one thing was clear: I wouldn't stay silent any longer. Not because of them, and especially not because of myself. I moved into a small rental room just behind the bus stop on 8th Street. The wooden door was old, scratched across the handle, the floor tiles were dull and worn, and the single window had a broken hinge. You had to pull it hard with both hands to get it to open, but at least it locked, had electricity, and no one inside called me a burden. I packed only one backpack and an old tote, some clothes, a notebook, a chipped laptop, and a nearly empty bottle of shampoo. There was no desk, so I pulled a wooden chair next to the bed to hold the laptop. No internet either. I had to walk to a nearby coffee shop next to the gas station, where a handwritten sign read, "Free Wi-Fi. Coffee refill, $1." Every morning, I bought the cheapest iced black coffee and looked for a spot near an outlet. The place always smelled like over-toasted bread, and the floor felt slightly sticky, as if it hadn't been mopped properly in ages. But for me, it was a makeshift office, a place to start over from zero. I logged into 3 online tutoring platforms, updated my profile, uploaded a laptop webcam selfie, and wrote a single-sentence bio. I believe everyone deserves someone who listens and teaches with patience. Under skills, I checked off SAT, ACT, GED, and noted that rates were flexible based on the student's situation. The first message came that afternoon. A mother from another state asked if I could tutor her son, a junior in high school struggling with math and preparing for college. The second message came the next evening from the mother herself, a single mom working toward her GED to find a better job. Both requested a free trial lesson. I agreed without hesitation, not because I had time to spare, but because I needed to feel useful. The first lesson took place right there in the coffee shop. I plugged in my headphones, set the laptop close to the wall to minimize noise, turned on the camera, and spoke slowly, clearly. For the high schooler, I used the same method Lauren once mocked as too convoluted for anyone to remember. But 10 minutes in, the boy laughed and said, "You explain like you're telling a story. I finally get it." His words caught in my throat. No one had ever said that to me. For the second student, I started by reading short passages slowly. Her voice trembled on the first few lines, but after a few tries, she got through a sentence. When I guided her through summarizing the paragraph, she went quiet for a moment, then whispered, "No one ever told me I was smart enough to understand this." I didn't respond right away. I simply said, "I'm not here to teach you how to be smart. I'm here to remind you that you have the right to understand." That sentence made her cry. I wasn't good at comforting people. I just let her wipe her tears, then gently moved on with the lesson. That day, I finished 2 sessions, 2 hours total, and earned $18. But when I left the shop, my pocket didn't just hold a coffee receipt. It held something unfamiliar, a sense that someone had quietly placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Keep going." I walked slowly back to my rental. The sky had dimmed. The wind slipped through my thin coat, but I didn't shiver. Not because it was warmer, but because I didn't feel empty anymore. That night, I sat down and recorded the lesson, hours, the payments, and student feedback on the back of a faded receipt from the day I moved in. I didn't have a ledger or spreadsheet, just shaky handwriting and a quiet determination. In the upper right corner, I scribbled a single note, The first time someone said, I helped them understand. That simple sentence stayed on my desk for days, a small reminder that I was no longer invisible. Over the following days, I picked up more students. Some were overwhelmed by college prep pressure. Others were adults trying to prove something to themselves. They all found me through short, simple messages, sometimes just a single line. Do you have time to help me? And I always replied, yes. Where should we start? No one asked who I used to be, what family I came from, or how many followers I had online. They just needed someone who would listen, and I no longer felt like I needed permission to exist. I was sorting out my weekly schedule when I heard 3 short knocks at the door. The tiny rental rarely had visitors. I got up slowly, walked to the door, and peeked through the crack. It was Hannah. She stood there holding something wrapped in a faded yellow kitchen towel, her face filled with hesitation, as if what she carried wasn't easy to deliver. I opened the door fully. Hannah didn't step in right away. She looked up at me, eyes soft. I didn't mean to interrupt, she said quietly, but I couldn't not bring this. She stepped inside and placed the bundle on the table next to the bed. I peeled away the cloth. Inside was a wrinkled, pale envelope, still sealed. My name, Jenna, was written in familiar, curved handwriting. I didn't need to read the signature. I already knew. Margaret. I sat down, my hand trembling slightly as I lifted the flap. Hannah spoke. I was at your mom's house, picking up an old box Lauren said she left for the learning center. While I waited in the kitchen, I saw this envelope in the drawer, stuffed under a stack of expired coupons and old bills. Your name was right there. It was never opened. I didn't say a word. I slowly peeled back the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, the ink smudged at one corner as if someone had held it with wet fingers. I read it in silence, line by line. Jenna, if you're reading this, I may no longer be here, but your voice, your words, the way you've carefully built each part of this program, they've never disappeared from my heart. Don't let their silence erase your voice. Don't become someone even you can't recognize. What you've created matters, and I did the only small thing I could. I protected it. I paused. My chest felt tight, like someone had placed a stone inside. I flipped to the back. Tucked into the fold was a shrunken scan of a legal document. Bold words at the top. Intellectual Property Authorization for Personalized Learning Curriculum. Signed at the bottom, Margaret L. Crawford. It included a notarization dated 3 years ago, just 6 weeks before she passed away. I turned to Hannah. She sat quietly, hands clasped together, eyes fixed not on me, but on some faraway spot on the floor. I don't know why your mom kept it, she said softly. But it definitely wasn't so she could give it to you. I nodded slightly. I understood that too well. If my mother had really intended to give me the letter, she would have handed it over right after the funeral. But I got nothing, not even a word, not even a glance of sympathy. The only thing I was told when I asked if Grandma had left anything was, "Don't stir up more trouble." I looked at the letter again, then at the legal document, as if I couldn't believe my eyes. Everything I had written, every chart, diagram, lesson plan, the things Lauren had stolen from me. Someone had stood up for me all along, and I never even knew it. I pictured Grandma again, sitting in that old armchair, shawl wrapped around her shoulders, turning through pages of my handwritten lesson books in purple ink. She once told me, "What you're building might be invisible today, but someday it'll be a shelter for a lot of kids." I'd thought that was just a sweet comfort from an old woman, but it turns out she meant every word. Anna stood, getting ready to leave. Just before she stepped through the door, she turned back. "I still have the digital file you sent me for feedback back then. If you ever need, I'll confirm it was yours." I nodded, saying nothing more. When the door clicked shut, the room fell silent again. I sat there, staring at the letter and the authorization document on the table. No music, no noise, no witnesses, but something swept over me, equal parts ache and warmth, as if someone had quietly placed my name back where it always belonged, just buried too long beneath dust. It took me 3 days to prepare the video, which was barely 10 minutes long, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I had never spoken anything truly mine in front of a camera. Most of my adult life, I'd lived in the background. I was the one writing lesson plans but never shown on the slides, the one buying birthday cakes but never in the pictures, the one writing scholarship essays for others, then waiting quietly alone for good news that never mentioned me. I sat at a rickety wooden table in my little rented room, the only light coming from a dusty window. No makeup, no framing. I just turned on the webcam, placed Grandma's letter in front of me, and opened the file with my earliest lesson plan designs. My voice was a bit hoarse, but each word came out steady and clear. I read the line Grandma Margaret had written to me, her words appearing on screen. Don't let their silence erase your voice. It felt like she wasn't just speaking to me, but to anyone who had ever been left out of their own family's story. I didn't accuse. I didn't say Lauren's name. I just presented the facts. I flipped through the documents, showed the revision dates, the hand-drawn diagrams, even the chart Lauren had recolored and labeled as original. I projected the legal document Grandma had left me, with her unmistakable signature and the undeniable notary stamp. Finally, I looked directly into the lens and said one sentence. I don't need anyone to take my side. I just need to stop being silent. I hit upload at 2:18 a.m., my hands slightly trembling. Then I closed the laptop, pulled the curtains shut, and sat quietly in the dark. No background music, no dramatic edits, just the truth, raw, worn, and finally spoken. I didn't expect anything the next morning, but my phone, lying on the nightstand, started buzzing while I was making coffee. The first message came from a former student. MS, I always knew the lessons were yours. Thank you for teaching me how to understand myself. The second came from a mother I had tutored for her GED. I shared your video. People need to know there are educators like you out there. The third came from a stranger. You're the first person who made me feel like I'm not crazy for being hurt by my own family. I opened YouTube. The video had over 20,000 views. The comments section was full of empathy, shared stories, and raw pain from others who'd been there. My sister stole credit from me too. My parents never said my name in their proudest moments. This story feels like it was written for me. No one cared what camera I used or how I lit the room. They only cared about one thing, someone finally saying what they never could. By the end of the day, a well-known education blogger reshared my video, writing, "A clear example of brilliance erased from the story and the courage to step into the light." Around the same time, a Reddit post began gaining traction. The title, Influencer Lauren Crawford Built Her Learning Academy Using Her Sister's Work? The post compiled clips from my video, comparing them with Lauren's lessons and ads. Each matching detail was dissected. Charts, grade-level structures, assessment methods. Someone even dug up screenshots from my old blog. Lauren had copied my opening paragraph word for word, changing only 3 words. I didn't join the debate. I just sat by the window, holding a cup of cold tea, watching my phone screen light up again and again. Inside, I didn't feel relieved or enraged, just a strange kind of release, like I was shedding an old shell. The silence I'd thought kept me safe was really just a cage that choked my voice. That night, I received a message from a teacher in another state. He wrote, "I always thought I was the only one cut out of my own accomplishments. Your video was the nod I'd been waiting for 10 years." I reread that line several times. Not because it was poetic, but because it was true. Because I knew that nod could save someone from feeling invisible. I didn't need social media to call me a hero. I just needed people to pause and see someone like me, not a polished face, not a flawless voice, just a person trying to reclaim what was stolen in silence. And this time, someone saw me. Not because I shouted, but because I finally spoke. That afternoon, light rain started to fall. Droplets ran in long streaks down the dusty window pane, reflecting the amber streetlights. I had just finished an online session when I heard knocking. 3 sharp raps. firm, unfamiliar. I stepped into the narrow hallway and looked through the peephole, and I nearly froze. My mother, my father, and Lauren. All three stood there, damp from the rain, no umbrellas. My mother wore her old beige coat she'd kept since her teaching days, clutching her leather purse, eyes red. My father stood behind her, tall but silent like a shadow. Lauren, still with her perfectly curled hair, but her face no longer held that radiance that used to push me out of frame. I opened the door but said nothing. I didn't invite them in. I didn't step back. We stood across from each other beneath the dim hallway light, the air thick with dampness and silence. My mother spoke first. Her voice trembled, no longer firm like it had always been. "Jenna, we were wrong, but family is everything. Please forgive your sister. She didn't mean to—" I looked straight into her eyes. The way she said "your sister" made it sound like everything was just a misunderstanding, a slip of the tongue, something we could all gently brush aside. I kept my tone even. "Which part are you asking me to forgive? The part where she stole from me? The part where she sued me over what I created? Or the part where my face was removed from the family photo in the living room?" She lowered her head, said nothing. My father remained silent, eyes fixed on the floor. Lauren stood slightly behind them, avoiding my gaze, but I could see it. Beneath the smudged mascara, her face no longer smug. But it wasn't remorse I saw, it was fear. Fear of knowing the story was no longer hers to control. I stepped half a pace forward, keeping just enough distance to see each of them clearly. "And what about Grandma's letter?" I asked, my voice slow and steady. "The letter she wrote to me." Mom kept it buried under a pile of expired coupons. The authorization form had her signature, a notarized seal, and you never said a word. Did you know Lauren copied the entire curriculum? Did you know she stood in front of millions and claimed it was her original work? My mother trembled slightly, then spoke in a whisper, so faint it could have been swept away by the air. At the time, everyone was exhausted. I just wanted to keep the peace. I looked at her and saw it clearly. How many years we had lived in a household where silence was valued more than justice, where peace was treasured more than truth. I turned to Lauren. "Do you have anything to say?" She bit her lip, eyes brimming with tears, but said nothing. The silence stretched, tearing through that narrow hallway like a rip. At last I spoke, with a voice I barely recognized as my own. "I don't fix other people's messes anymore. I'm not here to piece back what someone else broke on purpose. I'm just keeping what's rightfully mine." Lauren looked down. My mother cried. My father stayed silent. I took a small step back and placed my hand on the door latch. I didn't slam it. I didn't scream. I just closed it. Firmly. Quietly. The door clicked shut like the ending of a chapter that had never been allowed to finish. Behind me, the soft yellow light still glowed in the room, my laptop still open on the desk, and Grandma's letter pinned to the wall beside the copyright certificate, seal still intact. I sat down, picked up a pen, opened my notebook, and wrote one sentence. Not to remember, but to affirm. I don't need an apology to live by my own worth. I just need to never bow my head again. 3 days after that confrontation in the hallway, I received a package by express delivery. The courier handed me a thick cream envelope, the name of a major Dallas law firm printed across the front. I signed for it, closed the door, and held the envelope like it might shatter in my hands. I placed it on the table, sat down, turned on the light, and took a deep breath before tearing it open. Inside was an 8-page agreement, wrapped in elegant language and numbers big enough to make anyone living in a damp little room like mine pause. $350,000. The terms: delete the video, make no further public statements, never use Lauren's name or her academies in any material again. In return, they would restore my reputation with a vague announcement about internal misunderstandings. It was backed by a binding legal clause. Any breach would result in lawsuits and damages. I kept rereading the bolded line. This agreement is intended to preserve the appearance of familial reconciliation and prevent undue harm to all parties involved. I sat, frozen, for a long time. Those numbers danced in my head, brushing every vulnerable part of me: rent due soon, a laptop with a broken keyboard, a bank balance barely over $200, and not enough new students to carry me through the next month. $350,000 could change everything. It could buy me a private apartment, a small office, a life where I didn't have to choose the cheapest coffee. But it couldn't buy back what I'd lost: belief in myself. I slid the papers back into the envelope. I didn't tear them, didn't burn them, just folded them neatly and tucked them in my desk drawer, like something you know you'll never use, but aren't quite ready to throw away. Then I opened my laptop, launched a blank document, and typed a short sentence. Not long, not fancy, just one line. You don't owe anyone your silence just because you share their blood. I posted it on a blank white background. No photo, no music. I didn't explain, didn't mention the agreement, didn't say a word about money. But those who'd been through it would understand. Those whose voices had been smothered under the weight of family ties would read it and recognize themselves. Within hours, the post began to spread. In the comments were stories scattered but achingly similar. One woman wrote, "My mother always told me to stay quiet to keep the peace. That peace cost me my voice for 30 years. Another shared, "My brother broke my arm, but my family just said, 'Don't make a scene. I stayed silent for 10 years. Thank you for not staying silent.'" The hashtag #IsSpokeUp began appearing from the very first replies. At first, just a few, then hundreds, then thousands. No campaign, no leader. Just a community of people who had been pushed aside, told to stay quiet because we're family, now finally naming themselves. I sat next to my laptop, watching each comment appear. Some people posted photos of handwritten letters they'd never sent to their parents. Others shared memories of being called a burden. One simply posted a blank space where they'd once been cropped out of a family photo, just like me. A few major bloggers quoted my sentence as a kind of battle cry for courage. One freelance journalist wrote, "In an age where people are quick to erase what doesn't look good, one woman choosing to hold her ground has become an act of quiet rebellion." I didn't think I was doing anything revolutionary. I just couldn't live in someone else's shadow anymore. That night, I sat alone by the window. Light rain still fell softly. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement like a pale trail of fire. In my hand was Grandma's letter, still clipped beside the authorization on the wall. I reread the line etched into my heart: "You will build what no one sees today." I didn't need to build an empire, I just needed to keep my voice, something they had long since stopped listening to. And this time, no one could buy that silence, not with blood, not with money, not with fear. The apartment I lived in was barely 400 square feet, the window facing a small parking lot in a modest neighborhood, but there was one corner I cared for more than anything else. A blank patch of ivory-painted wall held 2 wooden frames. On the left, Grandma Margaret's handwritten letter, her pen strokes shaky but strong, her final message beneath it. On the right, the official certificate of copyright ownership. My name printed clearly: Jenna L. Crawford, sole author and owner of the Crawford Personalized Learning Model. I don't call it victory, I just think it was always mine to begin with. That spring, I submitted the paperwork to establish a small scholarship fund called the Margaret Legacy. It wasn't big, just a modest budget drawn from what I'd earned through tutoring, along with a few voluntary donations from parents who had heard my story. Each month, the fund would select 2 students facing financial hardship, offering them learning supplies or covering fees for the SAT, GED, or any other supplemental education program they needed. I didn't ask for essays or letters of recommendation, just one sentence: "I want to keep learning." The first time I announced the fund online, a message popped up from a name I once knew: Isabel M. McGurl I had tutored back when I taught at the public library. She wrote, "I still have the notebook you gave me. I retook the GED last year and passed." Below the message was a photo, a graduation certificate, and a snapshot of her standing in front of a classroom holding that old, thick notebook with frayed edges. I sat there, speechless. In that moment, I realized what I had truly held on to after everything wasn't just dignity. It was something deeper, a quiet nod from someone once considered not enough, who kept planting seeds in soil no one cared to tend. News from my family still appeared here and there as I scrolled social media. Lauren shut down her academy 3 weeks after all her sponsorships were pulled. My mother sold the old house. No clear reason given. Some said it was to cover legal fees. Others said she wanted to move closer to other relatives. I didn't know. I didn't look into it. They didn't call, didn't message, didn't offer any explanation. Didn't feel like I needed one. An early summer afternoon, while organizing materials for my summer tutoring sessions, I received a handwritten letter from a student named Madison. She wrote, "Back when I was learning with you, I told my mom I wanted to be a teacher. She told me not to dream. I wasn't smart enough. But now I'm in the teacher prep program at our community college. Because of you, I had the courage to try again." I read the letter, tears slipping quietly, without a sound. Each word brought me back to exactly where I belonged, not beneath someone else, not beside them, but standing in my own space, calm and steady. I printed a copy of Grandma Margaret's letter, folded it carefully, and placed it in a white envelope. On the front, I wrote the mailing address, to Madison via the public library office where she studied in the evenings. Inside, I included a small handwritten note with just one sentence: "You will build what others can't yet see today." No signature, no wishes, just the words my grandmother once believed in and the truth I had spent nearly a lifetime learning to understand. I sealed the envelope and stepped outside. The afternoon sun cast a long, warm beam across my back. I slipped the letter into the metal mailbox outside the corner store, listening to the soft sound it made as it dropped, light, but heavy enough to plant a seed of hope where people once believed nothing could grow. Then I turned away, without looking back. I don't know where you're hearing this story, from your car, your kitchen, or some quiet corner at the end of your day. But if you've ever felt like you were cut out of your own family picture, if you've ever stayed silent for the sake of peace while your heart was breaking, maybe you'll understand why I chose to speak up. I'm not telling this story to ask for defense or judgment. I'm telling it because some truths, if never spoken, sit in your chest like a wound that refuses to close. And sometimes, all it takes is one voice, for others to realize they're not alone. If there's something you've never said out loud, a hidden corner of your life, a memory that tightens your chest every time it returns, leave a comment below. I read every word not as a storyteller, but as someone who once sat on the other side of the screen, searching for a glimmer of understanding. And if you'd like to stay with me for more stories about family, about rupture and repair, about the things tucked behind the perfect photographs, hit subscribe, because sometimes the most important truths are the ones others tried to crop out.